All right, you ready to go?
Yes.
All right, this is Corinne Davenport. We're recording part 2 of our interview. We were talking about the kind of shifts in the late 70s, early 80s, and the work you were doing.
Sure. And I'm Paul Kuntzler again. I should say, back up and say something. In the the middle of 1960s, I saw my role as someone who's primarily supporting the work of others, primarily Dr. Kameny. I never then thought of that I was a leader, in terms of this. In the beginning, I was rather introverted and shy. All of that I've changed profoundly. We're here at the Rainbow History Project Pavilion, and I'm familiar with basically everything I knew so many of the personalities, political leaders like John Wilson, who's that building is over that's named after him. I knew Marion Barry, who's mayor of. In fact, I knew all 7 mayors, beginning with Walter Washington, who's now passed as Marion Barry has passed. And I'm fairly well known throughout the Washington community. There was a history conference at Martin Luther King, which I arrived on a Sunday a couple of weeks ago. And I went there to look at what films were available, DVDs. Anyways, this conference was going on, and they knew me. And in fact, they prepared a badge for me. Yeah, I'm fairly well known in now Washington. For 2 years, I had a part-time job with the East Street Cinema, which recently closed. And the management there, I think one of the reasons they hired me, because I was rather well known. There's so much diversity. For instance, the Rainbow History Project, there are 90 pioneers, About 19 of them have been passed on. And I'm familiar with many of them and work with them in different projects. The Rainbow History Project is another example of extraordinary diversity in the Washington area community. One of the pioneers is Annie Kaler. She was part of one of the owners of Annie's Paramount Steakhouse, which opened in April of 1948. I knew her very well, fairly well. She actually attended my late partner's celebration of life on Saturday, August 21, 2004. When she was honored as a pioneer, I'm the one who presented the award to 2 of Annie's managers. It's interesting to look at the leadership structure of Washington in the various areas, and it's a community that works very closely together, and it's sort of cohesive and has a provocative. I mean, it has an approach of trying to work together and resolve problems. As an example, I understood originally that DuPont Circle closed. Anyways, the mayor, and I know Mayor Balser fairly well, and others, and Vinson Slat managed to get it reopened. So that's an example. I've been been involved, for instance, Historic DuPont Circle Main Streets. I was actually one time treasurer of that organization. It's interesting. I've been in all 8 wards, and I know so many of the personalities involved.
And what do you remember about Marion Barry specifically? Part of the exhibit talks about how he was one of the people who
Correct.
especially stood up for the community in the late 70s, early 80s.
Well, I had a part-time job at Cannes Department Store, which is across from the National Archives, which doesn't exist anymore. I worked there in part. He was involved with a group called Free DC about promoting home rule for the District of Columbia. The Board of Trade apparently was a force then that it was opposition to home rule for the District of Columbia. He was they picketed the Kansas Department Store. You know, and I introduced myself one night and told them that I was supportive of what they were doing. This was like 1965, you know, and you know that's just another example of a profound change in Washington, in every aspect of life in Washington. You know, I knew Jim Graham, who was council member from Ward 1 and was also involved in the Whitman Walker Clinic very early. So I was involved in a peripheral way in the AIDS crisis when it developed back in the 80s, which had an extraordinary impact.
What were you doing as a part of that kind of peripheral involvement? What was
Well,
the work you were doing?
I was politically involved in I was on the Democratic State Committee, appointed by Marion Barry, and I was also on the board of the lottery board, appointed by Marion Barry and reappointed by Mary Sharon Pratt Kelly. So I knew so many of the personalities. And I would say, you know, the people who live in the district have a very strong political awareness and knowledge of the history of the city and the great changes, and there's largely an agreement about how to approach problems. Why don't you ask me some more questions?
I actually did. I got a question giving a tour at this exhibit about Marion Barry and how he kind of came to be a defender of the gay community along with his other work. Do you know how? I don't know. Did he know about the community before he was a councilman?
Yes, he.
How did that kind of relationship
he got
develop
elected
so strongly?
to the school board originally.
Yeah.
Before we had home rule, we had elected school board. He got elected to the school board, and then to the council. I played a significant role in his being elected mayor, first time in 1978. The Gertrude Stein Democratic Club endorsed him and provided workers and raised money and collected signatures. In 78, Walter Washington was running for re-election, and Sterling Tucker, who was chairman of the city council. one of those two men was expected to win the Democratic primary. But Barry developed a strong following in the gay community. He actually campaigned in gay bars, came to the Leather and the Ego, and as a result, in about 18 precincts, Marion got 50 to 65% of the vote. In all the other precincts, he ran third. The Saturday before the primary, the Washington Post ran a story. Gays hope to cast deciding votes for Barry, which is exactly what happened. And because he won by 1,500 votes. Yeah. The Washington Post also played a major role. They endorsed him, and I think they ran 5 or 6 editorials. He did very well in Ward 3, which is the largely affluent Caucasian precinct, ward, west of Rock Creek Park. I was one of my closest personal friends became part of the Barry government. He got appointed. I'm forgetting. I also got a friend of mine a job. We got his first term. Marion Barry appointed more openly gay men and lesbians to jobs and boards and commissions than all other elected officials combined in the United States, which is really quite something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I am curious, what is your, what has been kind of your involvement in politics and community building since like the 90s, 2000s? We've touched a lot on, the other decades.
Yeah. I continue to be politically active. I supported David Catania when he ran for mayor in 2014. He was a member of the city council and was a lawyer. I've been involved in Southwest leadership and where I live, and we now have so many members of the Democratic State Committee who are openly gay. And through what is now, the Sign Club is now called Capital Stonewall Democrats.
I'm a person like you.
And
other people that are taking these two gals, one of the who were running this. So any of those.
In the numerous organizations that exist in Washington, the Rainbow History Project is an example of that. We are. When Fenty was mayor, he designated the strip on 17th Street as Frank Kameny Way. And in Philadelphia, there's a gay neighborhood, I don't know, it's 12th, 13th Street. And that's happening in so many cities. Mm-hmm. The city government is now recognizing that certain neighborhoods are particularly identify with the gay, lesbian community.
I know that there are a lot of cities where that kind of neighborhood that has had the community center around it shifted. Have you noticed that in DC itself, that the neighborhood has kind of moved around?
Yeah, it has changed. I will say something. This is, the Kennedy Center has been taken over by Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. Well, there's been a major decline in attendance and memberships and everything. I've written 2 letters. They actually, this is some months ago, the Gay Men's Chorus was supposed to perform there, and it got canceled. Mm-hmm. I was active, not a member of the chorus, but active in supporting the chorus and promoting it, for many years. In fact, 5 members of Gay Men's Chorus performed at my late partner's celebration of life in Southwest. But there's another example of the reaction in the Washington community about the Kennedy Center being taken over by Donald Trump. They've had a serious decline. Some of the productions like Hamilton have been canceled. It's just another indication about how, in many ways, how cohesive the community is, the larger Washington community, both Caucasian, the African American community, Hispanic community. The Jewish community. I know so many people there. Jose is, he was interviewed for this article in Post. He's a rainbow pioneer, as I am, even Freud.
I'll watch the tape.
It's interesting. I think I never thought that the day would come. Well, Elaine Stritch, who died a couple years ago, is a great singer, Broadway figure. She used to sing, I've seen J. Edgar Hoover and Herbert Hoover, and I'm still here. And I too, I'm still here after 63 and a half years. I never thought the day would come where I would, the last person surviving in the Washington gay community. So it's very interesting. Mm-hmm. Because I think I told you Randy Wicker, who lives in Hoboken, New Jersey, and he's 87, has the longest longevity of anybody in the gay rights movement in North America, and I'm just behind him.
Yeah,
so
it's amazing.
It is amazing. Yeah, because so many of the major figures have passed away. Mm-hmm. Such as Lily Vincennes and Lily and Frank Kameny and people in California.
So I have a couple questions that kind of, I guess, spring from a similar place. Are there any of the people that you know, I see you've kind of checked off names on that list, anyone that you want to like tell us about, who you worked with, who you were close with, just in a community that you want to tell us a little bit about, their work, your guys' relationship, anything like that?
Well, Lucha Barrel, who's also a Rainbow Pioneer, he's the senior reporter at the Washington Blade. I've known him since the 1970s. He had a pseudonym, Lou Romano. There was a documentary that was shown at MLK the other evening I attended. He lives on Capitol Hill. He's very disciplined. He works very hard. And I assume compensation, which isn't that significant. But he has been the single most valuable member of the Washington Blade. And yeah, I saw him yesterday, first at the Washington Blade, and then as I was leaving, he had moved somewhere else in the crowd. He was taking notes, you know, because he's always there, always. Now he did last year. He wrote this major piece about me that appeared in the Washington Blade. As a result of that, Anita Bonds, who's a member of the city council, had this resolution passed recognizing my work, which I have this huge, was signed by all members of the city council. I don't.